Spencer didn't use the word urgent with me in the 16 years we were together. He's using it now, 3 years after we went our separate ways. The letter has been sitting on my kitchen counter for 14 days. It's under an HOA bill for $340 and a Publix BOGO coupon for frozen ice cream that expires Friday. I haven't moved it. I haven't thrown it away. Every morning, I make coffee. I look at it and I do nothing. This morning, the coffee went cold while I was staring at it. There's a thin skin on top of the mug now. I take a sip anyway and wince. I put the mug down next to my gray Yeti tumbler, the one with the EITC sticker on the side. I do pro bono work for a tax clinic in Decatur on Saturdays. Spencer always thought that was a waste of my time. I'm a forensic accountant. I track hidden money in divorce cases, mostly high-end ones. I know what corporate lawyers sound like when they're scared. I know what urgent means when a man like Spencer puts it in writing. It means the company is bad enough that he needs something from me, and he needs it soon. I open my laptop and pull up Bloomberg. The Holloway Vantage stock chart fills the screen. The line for the last 18 months drops steadily, the way a wheelchair rolls downhill without anyone holding it back. I've been watching this since April. I know exactly how bad it is. I also know exactly how many Class B shares I'm holding. Spencer signed them over to me in the divorce settlement 3 years ago. He smiled when he did it. Not a big smile, just a small one. The kind that says he thinks he won something. Hold on to them, March. They might be worth something someday. I remembered that smile for a long time. I never sold the shares. That's the embarrassing part. I'm a forensic accountant. I knew the shares were low value. I should have sold them the week after the settlement closed. But I didn't. I held on to them out of spite. I wanted to own something of his that he thought was trash. That's not professional discipline. That's spite. I've been good at spite my whole life. I hold things quietly until they look like patience. 7 years ago, I found out about the affair. Not through a text message, not through perfume on a shirt, through an Excel file. Spencer left his laptop open on the dining room table one evening. I was walking past, and my eyes caught the screen. A Q3 travel expense report. 2 names at the same hotel in Charleston. 3 times in 4 months. Vivian was Holloway Vantage's marketing director. She was 28. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds. Then I did what I always do. I didn't cry. I took a screenshot. I saved the file to a USB drive. I closed the laptop. I went to take a shower. The next morning, I called a lawyer. I told the story to exactly one friend. She asked me how I knew what I was seeing. I said, he didn't lie to me on the phone, or on a napkin, or in a hotel room. He lied to me on a spreadsheet. Of course I knew what I was seeing. My phone buzzes on the counter. A text from Theo, my son. He's 14. He lives mostly with Spencer and comes to me on weekends and every Wednesday night. Mom, can you get me at 3:15, not 3:30? Coach let us out early. I set the phone down. I look at the letter again. I know what Spencer wants from that meeting. He's going to ask me to vote with the board on some decision that will keep the company alive. He's going to ask me not to block it. Here's what he doesn't know I know. I've spent 3 months talking quietly to 2 small institutional shareholders, Willcrest Capital and Penn Equity, between my 11.4% of Class B shares and the quiet agreements I've built with them. I have 23.7% of the voting power. That number is enough to block any board move to save the company. I did the math in my head while I was looking at the Bloomberg chart. I could end him on a Tuesday, I thought, not proudly, just as a fact. I pick up Spencer's letter and fold it once, slowly. I put it in my jacket pocket. I squeeze it there, the way you squeeze an old candy wrapper before you throw it away, except I'm not throwing it away. I get in my car and drive to Theo's school. I sit in the parking lot and look at my phone for a long time. Then I open a text to Spencer's lawyer and type 4 words. I'll see you. Where? I hit send before I can stop myself. I put the phone in my bag and watch the other parents pulling in around me. 2 days later, I'm standing in an elevator on the way up to the 60th floor of the Holloway Vantage building in Midtown Atlanta. I used to come here maybe 30 times when I was Spencer's wife. I still remember the VIP elevator code. I didn't use it today. I stood at the main elevator bank with everyone else. The doors open at 60. I step out into the lobby. The receptionist at the front desk looks up, and I recognize her immediately. Brittany. She's been here for at least 10 years. She looks at me, and her eyes change, the way someone's eyes do when they're matching a face to a memory they didn't expect to use. Mrs. Holloway, she says. I give her a small smile. Just Mara now. Her face goes red, and she looks down at her keyboard. I don't blame her. She was being polite. She didn't know what to say. And Mrs. Holloway was the only name she had for me. A man I don't recognize walks me to the glass conference room on the south side of the building. The room has a full wall of windows that looks over Piedmont Park. The trees have turned yellow, but they haven't fallen yet. November in Atlanta is always late. Spencer is already in the room. He's standing by the window with his back to me. When he hears the door open, he turns around. I wasn't ready for what I saw. He has aged 7 years, not 3. His hair is gray at the temples. The skin around his eyes is thin now, the kind of thin you get from not sleeping right for a long time. He's still wearing the Patek Philippe, that watch. He wore it every single day of our marriage. I look at his wrist before I look at his face. That's an old reflex. I used to do it without knowing why. He wasn't scared. That surprised me too. I thought I was going to walk in and find a man who was performing calm, the way executives perform calm when they're panicking inside. But that's not what I found. He wasn't performing. He was just quiet. Quiet threw me off balance in a way I wasn't ready for. I stood there for a moment, and for the first time in 3 years, I didn't know what I was going to say next. Thank you for coming, Spencer said. You said urgent, I told him. I came because of that word. He sat down and slid a folder across the table toward me. I didn't open it. I left it where it was. You already know what shape the company is in, he said. He wasn't asking. We lost Synovus in Q2. We lost the GDOT contract in Q3. The board votes on December 12th about selling the B2. If they vote yes, the company survives. If they vote no, we're filing Chapter 11 inches February. What do you want from me? I said. He looked at me then, directly, for the first time since I walked in. I need you to vote with the board. Not for me. For the 800 employees who work here. I know you've been talking to Wilcrest and Penn Equity. I know you have 23.7%. I didn't move. He said the number. He said the exact number. He had been tracking me the same way I had been tracking him. For how long? Months, probably. While I was building my quiet alliance with those shareholders, He was watching. He knew. You think I'll save your company, I said. No, he said. I think you'll do what you want to do. I just want you to have all the numbers before you decide. He paused for a second. You always needed all the numbers. He wasn't wrong. That's what made it worse. I stood up. He let me. I walked toward the door and stopped with my hand near the frame. He said quietly, How's Theo? You see him more than I do, I said. You can answer that yourself. And I walked out. The elevator down felt longer than the one up. The conference room had smelled of orange peel, heavy and sweet, from a diffuser plugged in near the door. Under that was the smell of a forgotten latte from a meeting that had ended before mine started. When Spencer had shifted his hand on the table, the Patek Philippe made a small sound, a soft tick. I had never heard that in 16 years of marriage. Our house was never quiet enough for it. I drove home past Ponce City Market and turned through the Krog Street Tunnel, the one covered in graffiti on both sides. Spencer hated graffiti. I never took this route when I was his wife. Now, I take it because I can. I got home and opened my laptop. I drafted an email to Willcrest and Penn Equity. I typed the subject line, Vote Strategy, Final. I wrote 3 sentences. I read them back. Then I saved the email as a draft. I closed the laptop. I didn't know why I hadn't sent it. I sat there for a while, trying to decide if that was a real reason or just hesitation dressed up as thinking. 3 days after the meeting, I opened the folder Spencer had slid across the table. I had carried it home in my bag, even though I hadn't touched it in the conference room. I didn't know why I had brought it home. Now it was spread out across my living room floor. Theo was asleep upstairs. It was his Wednesday night with me. The apartment was quiet. I had a mug of coffee next to me, even though it was 11 at night. I go into a different mode when I'm working a set of financial documents. I've done it hundreds of times for other clients. I stop being a person and start being a process. I look for patterns. I spread the papers out in order. 3 years of internal financial reports for Holloway Vantage. I read slowly. I wasn't looking for what Spencer told me. I was looking for what he hadn't told me. Shell companies, payments to family members called consulting fees, travel expenses with no destinations. I know the hiding spots. I know how people place a number in a report so that nobody reviewing a budget will want to find it. I found nothing hidden, nothing obvious anyway, but then I found one line. It was in the Q2 2022 report, near the bottom of a long table. Operational restructuring costs. Department 14B, $1.2 million. Department 14B wasn't on the organizational chart. I checked the chart 3 times. It wasn't there in any year. A memory came to me that I hadn't thought about in a long time. It was 2018. We were in the kitchen. Spencer was leaning against the counter, watching me work on something for a client. He had a beer in his hand, the kind of casual Friday evening we had sometimes before everything fell apart. He said, Mar, if you had to hide a number in a company report so that nobody would find it, how would you do it? I thought he was teasing me. I said I wouldn't hide it. I'd put it under a name so boring that nobody would want to read it. Operational restructuring costs. 4 words that people skip past every time. He laughed. He walked over and kissed the side of my head. I went back to my work and forgot about the conversation completely. Now, I was sitting on my living room floor at 11 at night, looking at those exact 4 words. He used my answer. He used it after the divorce, years later, to hide a payment inside his own company's reports. He used the method I told him, word for word. I searched for Department 14B in every document in the folder. Nothing. I went to my laptop and opened a shared folder I still had access to, a leftover from when I was his wife, an IT oversight that no one had ever corrected. I searched through old invoice files. I found it after about 20 minutes. Department 14B was an internal code name. It had been used once for a single payment in 2022. The invoice listed a legal firm and a short note. Settlement. Confidential. I sat back and thought about that. Then I searched for the legal firm. It handled personal civil disputes, not corporate law. A second payment to Vivienne, not the one from the divorce. A different one, years later, larger and off the IRS books. So she had gone back to him. She had more leverage. He had paid her again to stay quiet because he was afraid that Mara, the forensic accountant, the woman who found his first lie in a spreadsheet, would find the second one too. I had spent 3 years telling myself a clean story. He had an affair. I found out. We divorced. That story was over. This one wasn't. I stood up and walked to the stairs. I went up slowly and stopped at Theo's bedroom door. He was asleep on his back. The lava lamp Spencer bought him for his 8th birthday was on, the orange one, throwing slow red shadows across the ceiling. The room smelled like too much Axe Phoenix body spray and the clean Tide smell of a fresh pillowcase. An Algebra 2 worksheet was on his desk with due Friday underlined in red by his teacher. An Atlanta United poster was taped slightly crooked on the wall. I remembered Theo begging Spencer to take him to that 2019 game. Spencer had promised. He forgot. I had lived 3 years inside the story that he chose her over me. Every decision I'd made since the divorce had been shaped by that story. The shares I held because I wanted something of his he thought was trash. The anger I wore as silence. The way I had never let Theo talk about his father in front of me without changing the subject. I did all of that because I was sure about what happened. And now I was standing in a doorway at midnight, realizing I had never asked the right question. I stayed in the doorway for a while. I didn't go in. I watched Theo breathe slowly. The lava lamp moved. The red shadows went across the ceiling and came back. I went back downstairs. I opened my laptop. I found Vivienne's phone number in an old contact file from when I was Spencer's wife. I had it because she used to send event invitations for company functions. I stared at the number for a moment. Then I opened iMessage and typed, "This is Mara Okafor. I need to see you. Pick the place." I hit send. No draft this time. No stopping to think about it. "I was wondering when you'd find me," Vivienne said. I hadn't even sat down fully yet. The coffee shop was small and not very loud. Octane Coffee, near the Beltline in the old 4th Ward. A local place, the kind that had survived everything this neighborhood had been through. There was a poster for an open mic Thursday night taped to the inside of the door. "I wasn't looking for you," I said. "You were a line on a spreadsheet." She smiled at that, not a mocking smile, a tired one. She was 35 now, not 28. She had a sweetened latte in front of her, not a diet one. There was a pale yellow stain on the sleeve of her jacket. the kind that comes from a baby or a toddler with food in their hands. She worked at an edtech startup now. She had 2 children with another man. For 7 years, I had been carrying a picture of Vivian in my head, the marketing girl, 28, the one he chose. That picture was very clear and very fixed. But the woman sitting across from me at a small wooden table, with both hands curled around a paper cup like she was keeping someone else warm, was not that picture. She told me what happened in a straight line, without detours. They had an affair for 4 months in 2018. When she realized Spencer wasn't going to leave me, she ended it herself. She left the company 3 months later. The first settlement, the legal one from just after the divorce, Spencer had offered it to her. She hadn't demanded it. He was afraid she would talk to a reporter. She had no plan to do that. But she was angry, and she took the money because she felt he owed it to her. That was the whole story of the first payment. The $1.2 million in 2022, I said. Department 14B. She looked at me. I don't know what that is. A payment. Off the books. Coded to a legal firm. She shook her head slowly. I never got more money from Spencer after the first settlement. Not $1. I looked at her. She wasn't lying. I've interviewed enough people over the years to know the difference between someone who is hiding something and someone who is confused by the question. She was confused. I sat back in my chair. If Vivian hadn't received that $1.2 million, then Department 14B wasn't paying her off, which meant I had been wrong about what that number was for. I went through it in my head, step by step. Spencer had been trying to save the company with his own personal money. He had moved funds from his personal accounts and put them back into the company to cover operating losses. But he had pulled the money out too quickly and left a gap in the books. Department 14B was the cover label for that movement of his own savings. He had been burning through his own money, quietly, in silence, to keep 800 people employed, and he hadn't told anyone. I came to this coffee shop to find a monster. I found a woman drinking a full sugar latte with a stain on her sleeve from her daughter, looking at me without any anger at all. She didn't break my marriage. Spencer broke it. Then he tried to fix the damage with money because that was the only tool he knew how to use. And the worst thing I learned today wasn't that he cheated. It was that he had never learned how to ask for help. Not from me. Not from anyone. He knew how to appear in control and pay for his problems in private. I thanked Vivian. She nodded. She didn't ask me what I was going to do. I think she didn't want to know. I drove home. I sat in my kitchen for a while without turning any lights on. Then I called my lawyer. I want you to prepare a proposal for the Holloway Vantage Board, I said. I'm not just voting. I want a seat. That evening, I called Theo on FaceTime. It was his night at Spencer's house. I never call on those nights. When his face appeared on the screen, he looked surprised. Mom? He had his school hoodie on. His hair was messy. Behind him, I could see part of the kitchen I used to cook in. I just wanted to see your face for a minute, I said. He nodded slowly. Okay, Mom. He didn't fully understand. That was fine. I didn't fully understand either. I hung up and stood in my kitchen. I looked at the counter where the lawyer's letter had been sitting for 14 days. It was gone now. I had moved it 2 days ago without thinking about it. The HOA bill was still there. The Publix coupon had expired on Friday. I opened my laptop at 1 in the morning and wrote one line to Spencer's lawyer. Tell him I want a board seat. Not negotiable. He has 48 hours. I closed the laptop and went to bed. My heels were loud on the marble floor of the Holloway Vantage lobby. I was wearing a black suit, not the one from my wedding, not the one I wore to the final court date of the divorce. A new one, bought last week from a store in Buckhead that I had walked past 100 times and never gone into. I walked in, found the right suit, and paid for it in 12 minutes. I didn't take the VIP elevator. I stood at the main bank with the people who worked here, the ones heading up to their desks at 8:45 on a December morning. Near the back of the elevator was a man I recognized. He had come to the house in 2019 to fix the router. He was in IT. He looked at me for a second, then nodded. I nodded back. The doors closed. The board met in the large conference room on the 60th floor. 8 people. Spencer sat at the head of the table. He was wearing the Patek Philippe. I sat down in the chair that represented my 23.7%, and I didn't look at his wrist. The first motion was clean. Sell the B2B payments division to Stripe. Save the company. I voted yes. The board voted unanimously. The second motion took longer to read aloud. Spencer would remain CEO in name. However, he would report to a new board oversight committee. I would chair it. I would have approval rights on any decision over $250,000. I would have veto power on any public relations strategy related to the company for the next 5 years, including anything connected to the Vivienne settlement, if it ever became a press story. Spencer signed the document. His hand didn't shake. He had been preparing for this since the day he sent the letter. After the vote, the others left. Spencer and I stayed in the conference room. Thank you, he said. I didn't do it for you, I said. I know. He was quiet for a moment. I hoped you'd do it for the 800 people. But I think you did it for something else. I did it for Theo, I said. That was half of the truth. I let him keep the other half. You're not going to forgive me, he said. No, I said. But I don't need to hate you anymore to get up in the morning. That's all I wanted from 2022 on. He looked at the table for a moment. Vivienne didn't blackmail me. I know, I said. I met her. He looked up. He hadn't known that. I could see it in his face. For the first time in the whole meeting, he looked caught, not hollowed out, not performing calm, just caught by someone who had done the work he thought he had hidden. I stood up and picked up my bag. Spence. I hadn't used that name in 3 years. It came out more easily than I expected. You don't need to ask for forgiveness. You just need to stop pretending you don't know what you did. I walked out. In the elevator down, I thought of my mother, a Nigerian woman who moved to Atlanta in 1979. She died in 2015, 2 years before Spencer and I began to fall apart for real. She didn't live to see the divorce. She had a phrase in Igbo for this kind of moment. Aka ji aka, hand holds hand. She told it to me when I was young, when I asked her what you do when someone has hurt you badly. I drove back to Inman Park. It was Spencer's weekend with Theo, so the condo would be quiet. I stopped at Publix on the way. The buy 2 get 1 free neon sign was on over the ice cream freezer, the way it always is. I stood in front of the Ben & Jerry's section for a moment and picked up a pint of Cherry Garcia. I don't like Cherry Garcia. Spencer does. I bought it anyway, because I could, because it would sit in my freezer and I wouldn't have to explain it to anyone. I got home. I put my bag down. I changed out of the black suit and hung it up carefully. I sat at the kitchen counter with the pint and a spoon. I pulled off the lid. There's a specific sound a Ben and Jerry's lid makes when it comes off, a quiet thuck, like a small thing ending cleanly. I looked down at my wrist. I was wearing my Timex, $89 from a CVS in 2023. It ticks softly and it keeps perfect time. I ate 3 spoonfuls of cherry Garcia. The frozen cherry numbed the tip of my tongue. I set the spoon down on the counter and looked at the wall for a while.
Honestly, this story felt very real to me because nobody was fully good or fully bad. Mara and Spencer both hid the feelings behind work, control, and silence for too long. I like that the ending wasn't about revenge. It was about finally letting go of the anger and learning how to live without carrying all that hurt every day. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next video.